How Carl Jung would explain avoidant attachment. This will shock you. Have you ever loved someone who felt like a fortress? Someone who pulls you in with intoxicating depth, only to suddenly become a ghost in the exact same room? You look into their eyes and find a blank wall, a chilling emptiness. They tell you they just need space. They convince you in themselves that they simply do not need anyone. But what if this flawless independence is a lie? What if this untouchable strength is not a personality trait, but a biologically reinforced survival mask? Today we are holding a mirror to avoidant attachment. We are descending into the darkest waters of the human mind through the piercing lens of the legendary psychiatrist Carl Jung. Jung would not see someone who simply values their freedom. He would see a psyche at war with itself. A tragic split between the conscious mask they wear to survive and the emotional core they buried alive. Modern psychology calls it avoidant attachment, but Jung would call it complete possession by the persona, a desperate amputation of the shadow. Society often praises the avoidant. We idolize the lone wolf. We think they have mastered their emotions. But mastering an emotion is not the same as assassinating it. Neuroscience tells a darker story. During an emotional conflict, their conscious mind appears perfectly calm. Their face is a blank slate, but underneath the skin, cortisol is spiking. Their nervous system is experiencing the exact catastrophic stress of an active panic attack. They are not at peace. They are profoundly dissociated. Their brain has miswired human connection. Instead of registering intimacy as safety, their amygdala flags emotional closeness as a literal threat to their survival. To the avoidant nervous system, being truly seen feels like being hunted. Why? Because in early development, the equation of love got corrupted. Reaching out resulted in coldness or intrusion, and so the psyche made an unconscious vow: I will amputate my need for others. Needing someone is the equivalent of being destroyed. Jung knew that whatever we refuse to face does not disappear. It goes underground. It becomes the shadow. And the harder you push it down, the more it orchestrates your life from behind the scenes. The avoidant person is not lacking the capacity for love. They are terrified of it. They are guarding a fragile inner child with armor so thick it is suffocating them. Today we tear down the illusion of the untouchable soul. We will explore how the avoidant fortress is built and how the unconscious mind forces them to replay their deepest fears. Prepare yourself. This is a psychological horror story, but one with a profound path to redemption. Let us begin. Let us begin with the architecture of the mask. Carl Jung introduced the persona, the necessary social skin we wear for the world. The polite smile we give a stranger. We know it is a performance, one we remove when we come home. But for the avoidant, the persona is not a skin. It is a titanium bunker, a vault constructed with terrifying precision. They have worn it for so long, they have forgotten their real face. Their persona broadcasts one unwavering message: I am entirely self-sufficient, and therefore no one can hurt me. To understand this fortress, we must look at the raw biology of a developing child. The neuroscience of survival. A child's brain desperately seeks co-regulation. When distressed, their nervous system is on fire. They cry out to calm their racing amygdala, but what happens when that cry is met with nothing? When the caregiver is emotionally a ghost or dismisses their tears as weakness? The child's brain is a ruthless survival machine. It calculates a devastating truth. Reaching out brings the burning humiliation of rejection. My vulnerability is a liability. And so, the brain initiates a biological lockdown. The avoidant persona is born. Neuroscience shows us exactly how. The brain heavily relies on the prefrontal cortex, the logical control center, to actively suppress deeper primitive emotional signals. The child surgically severs the connection between bodily feelings and conscious awareness. They literally teach their brain to stop yearning for connection. Pathways for reaching out are pruned. Pathways for hyper-independence are heavily insulated and made lightning fast. Fast forward 30 years. You fall in love with this person. You sit across from them longing for intimacy and ask, "What are you feeling right now?" They give you a blank, unreadable stare. You think they are stubbornly withholding their inner world, but the brutal reality is far more tragic. They are not hiding their feelings from you. They are hiding them from themselves. The bridge to their emotional core was blown up decades ago. The persona runs the entire operating system. This hyper-independent, unbothered adult is a masterpiece of psychological engineering. But it is completely hollow. To completely eliminate the risk of abandonment, they had to commit the ultimate betrayal. They abandoned themselves. They survived beautifully. Highly successful, admired for their unshakable calm. But they are not living. They are simply defending an empty fortress. Yet, no matter how thick the walls, banished emotions do not simply evaporate. Jung warned us about this. He warned us about what happens to the pieces of ourselves we throw into the dark. Carl Jung had a name for the psychological basement where we lock away the parts we cannot bear to see. He called it the shadow. Everything conflicting with the titanium mask of the persona must be violently suppressed. So, what exactly is the avoidant hiding in their shadow? Many who have been hurt believe the avoidant is hiding a cold, calculating monster. But Jungian psychology flips this entirely. The truth is heartbreaking. The avoidant's shadow does not contain a monster. It contains a weeping, desperately lonely child. It contains the raw biological need for human connection, the absolute terror of being abandoned. In Jungian theory, the persona and shadow exist in perfectly balanced opposition. The more the mask projects unshakable independence, the more desperate and terrified the unconscious shadow becomes. They carry an invisible ocean of repressed grief, and they are terrified of it. If they ever crack the vault and feel how desperately they want to be loved, the original childhood pain would flood and destroy them, or so their brain believes. This is why their neurology misclassifies intimacy. When you look deeply into their eyes and offer a safe haven, their brain does not translate your warmth as a gift. It translates it as a catastrophic threat. Because to accept your love, they must open the fortress. They must expose the exiled, terrified child. To the avoidant nervous system, vulnerability is not beautiful. Vulnerability is a death sentence. Their amygdala, the brain's primitive alarm bell, literally cannot tell the difference between emotional intimacy and a physical predator. When you ask for deeper commitment, their internal alarm screams, "Danger, intruder, shut it down now." This is the exact moment they pull away. The moment you feel the sudden icy chill in the room, they might suddenly find a dozen tiny irrational flaws in you. Modern dating calls this the ick, but it is not a loss of attraction. It is a life or death defense protocol. They are pushing you away to stop the shadow from breaking through. They are not rejecting you because you are not good enough. They are rejecting you because you are getting too close to the vault. Because your love threatens to thaw a heart they spent a lifetime freezing. They choose the empty safety of the persona. But as Jung observed, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. And their fate is a magnetic trap. A trap that forces them to seek out the exact person who will tear their world apart. Let us talk about the cruelest joke of the human psyche, the law of attraction. Have you ever noticed the classic tragically predictable pairing in relationships? The hyper-independent, stoic, emotionally unavailable avoidant, and the deeply feeling, intensely expressive, anxious empath. It is the most common agonizing dance in modern romance. You might think it is just bad luck. You might think opposites simply attract, but Carl Jung would disagree. He would look at this magnetic trap and see a perfect, terrifying psychological mechanism at work. He called it projection. Jung observed a profound law of the mind. Whatever we refuse to acknowledge within ourselves, we will inevitably project onto someone else. If we do not live out our own shadow, if we violently amputate our own vulnerability, our unconscious mind will desperately seek out someone to carry that weight for us. Why doesn't an avoidant simply date another avoidant? Because two impenetrable fortresses cannot generate a spark. Two blank walls staring at each other offer zero warmth. The avoidant, despite their flawless mask of self-sufficiency, is psychologically starving. They are emotionally malnourished. And so, their unconscious mind goes hunting. It hunts for a proxy. It hunts for someone who is completely fearlessly alive in the realm of emotion. Jung spoke of the Anima and Animus, the unconscious feminine or masculine counterpart within us. But beyond gender, this represents the missing half of our soul. For the avoidant person, their missing half is emotion itself. They are drawn to the anxious empath like a moth to a blinding, dangerous flame. In the beginning, it feels like absolute magic. The avoidant partner experiences a sudden intoxicating rush of life. They feel the warmth of intimacy, the thrill of being intensely desired, but here is the brilliant dark catch. They get to experience all of this with zero risk. They experience the emotion entirely through you. The anxious partner does all the emotional heavy lifting. The anxious partner initiates the deep conversations. The anxious partner speaks the words of love. The anxious partner cries the tears and screams for the connection. The avoidant gets to sit safely behind their titanium wall and quietly absorb this emotional energy like a sponge. They get to feel loved without having to risk loving back. They are literally using you to live out their own shadow. Your desperate visible need for them is the exact mirrored reflection of their own inner exiled child. You are acting out the exact feelings they locked away decades ago. But then the inevitable happens. The trap snaps shut. Eventually, the anxious partner is drained. The empath looks across the room and asks for reciprocity. I have given you everything. Now it is your turn. Open up. Show me your heart. In that exact split second, the dynamic violently flips. The emotional proxy is no longer safe. The mirror is turned back onto the avoidant, demanding that they step out of the fortress and participate. This demand for true reciprocity triggers a massive neurobiological crisis. The avoidant's amygdala flashes red. The threat detection system screams. The very same intense emotional partner they just used to feel alive suddenly transforms into a suffocating monster. The avoidant looks at your tears, your perfectly normal human need for reassurance, and they feel a sudden wave of revulsion. They see you as too much. They see you as needy. They see you as dramatic and unstable. This is the peak of Jungian projection. They are projecting their own deeply repressed shame about having needs directly onto you. They must punish you for displaying the very emotions they secretly desperately wish they had the courage to feel. When they look at you with that cold, deadened stare and ask, "Why are you always so emotional?" what they are really saying is, "Why are you forcing me to look at the terrified, needy child I buried alive?" And to escape that terrifying reflection, they do the only thing their biology knows how to do. They pull the plug. Let us freeze time for a moment. Let us look at the exact second the avoidant wall slams down. You have probably experienced this terrifying shift. One evening you are laughing together. The connection feels deep. You feel safe. And the very next morning, you wake up next to a stranger. Their eyes are flat. Their voice is monotone. They look at you, the person they just claimed to love, and they feel absolutely nothing. Modern dating calls this losing the spark. The avoidant partner will tell you, "I just don't feel it anymore. It is not you, it is me." But what is actually happening beneath the skin? Is love really that fragile? Can a profound human connection simply evaporate overnight? No. It does not evaporate. It gets anesthetized. To understand this, we must strip away the poetry of romance and look at the cold, hard wiring of the autonomic nervous system. When the avoidant's unconscious mind perceives that you are getting too close, when the shadow is threatened with exposure, the brain initiates a catastrophic defense protocol. Attachment theory calls these deactivating strategies, but biology calls it a dorsal vagal shutdown. Let me explain. We all have a vagus nerve. It is the biological superhighway that connects our brain to our heart, our lungs, and our gut. It regulates our sense of safety, our facial expressions, and our capacity for connection. When an anxious person feels threatened in a relationship, their sympathetic nervous system flares up. They go into fight or flight. Their heart races. They panic. They pursue. They send a dozen text messages. They want to fix the disconnection immediately. But the extreme avoidant nervous system does something entirely different. When the threat of intimacy becomes too high, When the cortisol floods their system and the alarm bells of the amygdala ring too loudly, their brain skips fight or flight entirely. It goes straight into freeze and collapse. This is the dorsal vagal response. It is the exact same ancient biological mechanism a mouse uses when it is caught by a predator. The mouse plays dead. Its heart rate drops. Its breathing becomes shallow. It literally numbs itself to the impending pain of being destroyed. When the avoidant partner suddenly loses feelings for you, they are playing dead. Psychologically and emotionally playing dead. Their brain literally releases endogenous opioids, the body's natural painkillers, to completely numb their emotional receptors. The love did not die. The connection was not a lie. Their nervous system simply pulled the main circuit breaker to prevent a perceived emotional electrocution. They are dissociating. They are severing the cord between their conscious mind and their bodily sensations. And the ultimate tragedy is, the avoidant person usually has no conscious awareness that this is a biological reaction. They genuinely believe their own excuses. They tell themselves, I guess I just don't love them anymore. I guess they were not the right one. I just need my independence back. They rationalize a biological shutdown with a brilliant logical narrative because the prefrontal cortex, the rational thinking brain, is exceptionally good at making up stories to explain why the body has suddenly turned to ice. Watch them use these deactivating strategies in real time. They will suddenly focus intensely on your minor flaws. The way you dress, the way you speak, a slight difference in political views. They will start picking fights over absolute nonsense. They will prioritize their work, their hobbies, their friends, or literally anything else to create physical and emotional distance from you. They are not doing this to maliciously torture you. They are doing it because their biological threat meter is screaming that your love is a trap. And the only way their body knows how to survive a trap is to turn completely to stone. So, when the nervous system pulls the plug, when the avoidant partner turns to ice and walks away, what exactly are they trying to escape? What is the invisible monster chasing them out the door? It is a terror so profound, so deeply rooted in the unconscious that it defies all conscious logic. It is the terror of engulfment. To understand this, we must look at one of the darkest, most suffocating concepts in Jungian psychology, the archetype of the devouring mother or the devouring father. When we think of childhood trauma, we usually picture neglect. We picture the absent parent, the cold parent, the parent who simply was not there. And yes, that creates avoidance. But there is another far more insidious way to create an avoidant nervous system. It happens when a parent is too present, when a parent has no boundaries. Imagine a child who is not treated as a separate human being, but as an emotional extension of the parent. The parent is anxious, overwhelmed, or deeply unfulfilled in their own life, so they unconsciously use the child to soothe their own wounds. They demand total emotional enmeshment. They need the child to be their best friend, their therapist, their ultimate source of meaning. Carl Jung called this the devouring archetype. It is a love that does not nurture. It is a love that consumes. It swallows the child's fragile developing identity whole. For this child, the mathematics of survival shift in a terrifying way. They learn a catastrophic lesson about intimacy. If I let someone get close to me, if I let them love me, they will absorb me. I will lose my autonomy. I will cease to exist. To be loved is to be eaten alive. Fast forward into adulthood. This deeply buried unconscious association dictates every romantic move the avoidant person makes. When you, their partner, ask for more closeness, when you ask to merge your lives, to share a living space, to spend all your free time together, you are speaking the language of romance. You are offering them a beautiful intertwined future, but their amygdala, their ancient threat detection center, does not hear romance. It hears the devouring mother. It hears the devouring father. To the avoidant brain, a relationship is not a safe harbor. It is a cage where the air is slowly being sucked out. This is why they guard their independence with such lethal hostility. Their need for space is not a casual preference. It is a literal gasp for psychological oxygen. When you get too close, they do not just feel annoyed. They feel profound existential claustrophobia. They feel their very identity dissolving into yours. They look at you, and they do not see a loving partner. Their unconscious mind projects the shadow of the devouring archetype onto you. You become the threat to their sovereignty. You become the monster that wants to swallow them. This is the agonizing paradox of the avoidant soul. They are humans, and so they crave connection. But the moment they achieve that connection, the primitive parts of their brains scream that they are dying. And so, they must create distance to survive. They must pick a fight. They must find a flaw. They must emotionally check out. They must rebuild the titanium wall of the persona just to prove to themselves that they still exist, that they are still an individual. But building walls is exhausting, and living in a fortress is incredibly lonely. So how does the avoidant mind cope with this eternal agonizing conflict between the need for love and the terror of it? It creates a phantom, a perfectly safe, entirely fictional ghost to love instead. Let us talk about the ghosts, because the avoidant mind is a haunted house. If you have ever loved an avoidant person, you have likely felt the presence of a third entity in the room, an invisible rival that you simply cannot defeat. This is the phenomenon known as the Phantom X, or its mirror image, the idealized perfect future partner. You see, the avoidant person is trapped in an agonizing paradox. They desperately crave love, but their nervous system classifies real present-tense intimacy as a lethal threat. So, how does the brain solve this impossible equation? How do they get to feel love without triggering the amygdala's alarm system? They remove the most dangerous element of love, reality. They fall in love with an apparition, a ghost, a sanitized, flawless memory of someone who is no longer there. Think about it. When the ex-partner was actually in the room, the avoidant felt suffocated. They felt engulfed. They picked fights, they pulled away, and they likely sabotaged the relationship. Because a real human being has needs. A real human being asks for reassurance. A real human being triggers the fear of the devouring archetype. But the moment the relationship ends, the moment the ex-partner is permanently out of reach, a profound biological shift happens. The threat of engulfment vanishes. The amygdala stops screaming. The nervous system finally deeply exhales. And only then, from a perfectly safe, impenetrable distance, does the avoidant brain allow the emotional gates to open. Suddenly the X becomes perfect. Suddenly they are the one that got away. The avoidant partner will mourn this Phantom X for years. They will hold on to this ghost like a religious artifact. But Carl Jung would look at this and shake his head. He would tell you that they are not mourning the actual person. They are mourning a projection. They have taken their own internal anima or animus, their own exiled capacity for perfect love, and projected it onto a memory. A memory cannot ask you to compromise. A memory does not cry when you ignore it. A memory demands absolutely nothing. It is the ultimate flawlessly safe relationship. And they use this ghost as a weapon against you. You, the living, breathing partner, sitting right in front of them. Whenever you get too close, whenever your love threatens to breach their titanium wall, they will unconsciously summon the ghost. They will compare your very real messy human flaws to the sterilized perfection of the Phantom X. You are great, but I just do not feel that spark I had with them. If they do not use the past, they will use the future. They will endlessly chase an idealized fantasy, the one. The perfect soulmate who will effortlessly understand them without ever requiring a single conversation. They construct an impossible checklist. And the moment you fail to meet even one criteria on that list, they pull the ripcord. We are just not compatible, they will say. They use the illusion of a perfect tomorrow to actively assassinate the reality of today. Because reality requires vulnerability. Fantasy requires nothing. Neurologically, this is brilliant. Their brain gets the dopamine hit of romantic longing without the terrifying cortisol spike of actual vulnerability. They get to be the tragic romantic hero in their own mind, endlessly searching for a love that their biology will never actually allow them to experience. It is a perfect closed loop of self-sabotage. They are perpetually safe. and they are perpetually profoundly alone. But no human being can live in a fortress forever. Eventually, the walls begin to crack. Eventually, the shadow demands to be paid. No fortress can stand forever. The laws of physics, the laws of biology, and the laws of the human mind all agree on one absolute truth. You cannot suppress energy indefinitely. Building the avoidant mask was a masterpiece of childhood survival. But maintaining that mask for decades, holding that heavy titanium door shut against the screaming desperate needs of the shadow, it requires a staggering, incalculable amount of physiological energy. And eventually, the body simply runs out of fuel. Carl Jung knew that a life lived entirely through the persona is a life built on a fault line. He knew that the unconscious mind is self-regulating. If you pull a pendulum too far to one side, if you violently force yourself into a state of hyper-independence and emotional numbness, the psyche will eventually snap back with terrifying destructive force. In Jungian psychology, this collapse is often referred to as the dark night of the soul. When does this breaking point happen? It rarely happens in their 20s or 30s when they are distracted by building their careers, chasing success, and perfectly choreographing their shallow relationships. The crack usually appears in midlife, or it happens when a severe illness strips away their physical autonomy. Or, most tragically, it happens when they finally succeed in destroying a relationship with a partner who was genuinely profoundly safe, someone who did not want to devour them, but simply wanted to love them. Once that partner is truly gone, once the dust settles and the avoidant is left alone in the perfect undisturbed silence of their independence, the psychological dam begins to fracture. Let us look at the neuroscience of this collapse. For their entire life, their prefrontal cortex has been working overtime, aggressively hitting the brakes on their emotional limbic system. But chronic suppression creates what scientists call an allostatic load. It is the cumulative wear and tear on the body from chronic hidden stress. The nervous system cannot remain entirely rigid forever. The cortisol production burns out. The biological circuit breakers fail. And suddenly, the vault bursts open. The shadow, starved and furious from decades of exile, floods the conscious mind. All the grief they never processed. All the terror of abandonment they denied. All the agonizing, unwept tears from their childhood. It hits them all at once. For the avoidant person who has prided themselves on being the most rational, unbothered person in the room, this experience is absolute, unadulterated hell. It does not feel like sadness. It feels like dying. They might start experiencing sudden, inexplicable panic attacks. They might find themselves weeping uncontrollably on the floor of their apartment, unable to understand why the independence they worshipped now feels like a suffocating tomb. Their physical health often deteriorates. The body, having kept the score for so long, finally forces them to pay the debt. Autoimmune issues, chronic fatigue, mysterious physical pains. The suppressed emotion literally attacks the physical tissues of the body. They look in the mirror, and the polished, successful persona has melted away. Staring back at them is the terrified, lonely child they tried to leave behind. They realize with crushing clarity that their entire life was built on a brilliant, tragic lie. They realize they spent their best years running from the very thing that could have saved them. Love, connection, vulnerability. They realize they are completely devastatingly alone. And for the first time in their life, they cannot numb the pain. The deactivating strategies no longer work. The Phantom X offers no comfort. The distractions feel hollow. They are trapped in the dark night of the soul. But Jung would not look at this breakdown as a tragedy. He would look at this total devastation and see the very first agonizing spark of hope. Because the breakdown of the persona is not a punishment. It is an invitation to finally become whole. So, what happens after the collapse? What happens when the titanium vault is blown wide open and the avoidant is left sitting in the rubble of their own perfectly constructed life? Carl Jung did not believe in simply patching up the mask. He did not believe in going back to sleep. He believed in alchemy, a profound, agonizing, and ultimate transformation of the human soul. He called this masterwork the process of individuation. Most avoidant individuals believe they are already highly individuated. They think their fierce independence, their ability to stand entirely alone, is the absolute peak of psychological evolution. But Jung would gently, brutally correct them. Isolation is not individuation. Isolation is an amputation. True individuation means becoming indivisible. It means becoming whole. And you cannot be whole if you have violently banished half of your own humanity into the dark. Healing requires the most terrifying act of courage an avoidant person will ever face. It requires integrating the shadow. Healing does not mean suddenly becoming an anxious, emotionally explosive person. It means walking down the cold, dark steps into the basement of your own mind. It means looking directly at that terrified, weeping inner child. The part of you that desperately yearns to be held the part you despised as weak, and finally saying, I see you. I will not lock you away anymore. It means reclaiming the exiled emotional core. But how do you actually do this? Insight is not enough. Knowing why you pull away will not stop your body from doing it. How do you convince a primitive nervous system, which has spent 30 years treating intimacy as a lethal predator, that it is finally safe to lower the drawbridge? We must turn from Jung to the modern miracle of neuroplasticity. The brain is not hardwired in concrete. It is plastic. It can be remolded. But the only way to rewrite a biological survival code is to walk directly into the fire of your own panic. You must physically teach your body that safety is not a trap. Imagine the scenario. You are sitting with a partner who loves you. They look into your eyes and ask for true emotional presence. Instantly, the old alarm bells ring. The amygdala flashes red. You feel the sudden icy wave of the dorsal vagal shutdown. The sudden overwhelming urge to pick a fight, to find a flaw, to pull out your phone, to run for the door. To heal, you must do the exact opposite of what your entire biological system is screaming at you to do. You do not run. You do not play dead. You do not check out. You force yourself to stay in the room. You feel the suffocating terror of engulfment rising in your chest. You feel your heart pound. You feel the overwhelming urge to turn to stone, and you simply breathe through it. You look at your partner absolutely terrified, and you force yourself to speak the hardest words an avoidant person can ever utter. I am feeling completely overwhelmed right now. My entire body is telling me to shut down and push you away. But I am trying to stay right here with you. The very second you speak your hidden fear out loud, the spell is broken. The shadow is brought into the light of the conscious mind. The monster loses its teeth. By vocalizing the urge to run, you are taking the steering wheel back from the primitive amygdala and handing it to your prefrontal cortex. In that exact moment, your brain begins to fire in a completely new pattern. You are carving a new neural pathway, a pathway that sends a revolutionary message to your nervous system. I am experiencing intense closeness, and I am not dying. I am showing my weakness, and I am not being swallowed whole. I am still me, and I am safe. It is not a quick fix. Reprogramming decades of survival instincts is the psychological equivalent of learning to walk again with shattered legs. It takes time. It takes excruciating patience. It requires tolerating the profound discomfort of being truly seen. But it is the only way out of the haunted house. It is the only way to stop surviving and finally begin living. Let us bring this journey to an end. We have walked through the darkest corridors of the avoidant mind. We have seen the fortress for what it truly is, not a monument to strength, but a monument to fear. If you are an avoidant person listening to this, I want you to hear me very